A VBAC, what is that and why would I want one? Hi, if you're new around here, welcome. My name is Cassidy and we talk all things motherhood and homemaking here. And today we're going to be talking VBAC. I am currently pregnant with baby number 7. Number 6 was a C-section, cesarean section. And all of my others, he's the only one that I had a C-section with. And I am looking to, in this labor and delivery, to have a VBAC. A VBAC is a vaginal birth after cesarean. And it's kind of a complicated situation. Not all doctors will provide a VBAC. Not all doctors are comfortable with them. So finding a doctor that will do it, and whether or not you're a good candidate for it, it can be kind of stressful. So I just wanted to do this video, share what I have researched and learned, what can help you better your odds to it. And even if all of that is said and done and it doesn't look like you might be a good candidate, that doesn't mean that you won't be. These are just what I have researched, just my opinion, my experience, my situation. This isn't for everybody, but I just hope that this could be helpful and encouraging for anybody who's looking to also have a VBAC. So, like I said, this is my 7th pregnancy. All of my other births have been vaginal births, minus the 6th baby who was a C-section. Now, to understand that, what happened was he was breech at 37 weeks, which is super uncommon. And they were kind of pushing the C-section then because the doctors that I were with, the practice that I was at, isn't comfortable with delivering breech babies. So they gave me a couple options. Either I can go and just schedule the C-section, or I could try a version. And a version is where they turn the baby from the outside, right side down, so their head is down. And so I went that route because I really, having 5 other children and having like a 4 to 6 week recovery, and it's serious abdominal surgery. That's not my choice. That's not my style. That's not my experience. And so I went for the version. I ended up getting the version, I think like three or 4 different times, and it's a crazy story, but either way, he just had so much room to keep moving back and forth. And because of the traumatic birth that I had with my 5th baby, she had shoulder dystocia. She was a very large baby. She ended up getting stuck. It caused a lot of problems, which gave me some trauma and stuff that I just didn't deal with before. And I panicked halfway through my labor, and I went ahead and got the epidural. And when I did that, he flipped back around. They tried to do a couple things to engage him. It wasn't working, so ultimately they decided, putting a slow leak in my water to help him, lower down and engage would be the right route. But because I had so much amniotic fluid, it wasn't just like a slow leak, it was a huge gush. And when he engaged with his hand up by his face, and they tried to push it down. He just kept on grabbing on. And so he really wanted to come out like Superman, arm up, and they were not comfortable delivering him that way. There could have been a lot of damage done to him or I, and the safer route was to just do the C-section. So with that all being said, it wasn't an emergency situation. It wasn't something that is like common in my pregnancies where it would cause, the reason for my C-section wasn't the norm. It was like a random kind of situation. And so that is one of the reasons that make me a good candidate for C-section. So I took some notes down just to make sure that I stay on track and I make all the points that need to be made. So don't mind me while I'm looking down for a second. Okay, so some of the things that will help better your odds having a VBAC is for you to have a healthy weight. And that's one of the things that I have been working on. I have been overweight for a long time. The last 3 of my, pregnancies, I've been overweight, and it hasn't been a concern. It's still not a concern for my doctor. My weight gain has been really well. But even if that, he said that I'm not at a weight that would really be a factor. And because I am being diligent in my weight gain and stuff like that, it looks good. So I know that if you're, technically I am obese, like that's just what it is. But the larger you are, the more weight that you have on, it may lower your chances. But again, like I said, it doesn't mean that you're not a good candidate just because you might be overweight or obese or whatever title you want to be under. It just means that it might lower your odds. That's all. And then oftentimes women over the age of 37, it can cause, the older you are, it can work against you. Not again, like it's going to. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good candidate for it. It just lowers your odds. And then if you've only had 1 C-section, you have better odds than repeat C-sections. And again, just because you've had multiple C-sections doesn't mean that you're not a good candidate for VBAC. I actually have 2 friends, one of which had delivered her 3rd baby, and it was a successful VBAC. The other 2 were C-sections, and I believe both under some kind of emergency situation. With her daughter, it was more for her daughter's health reasons, because she had, some existing stuff, not necessarily just like labor, it was like pre-labor health problems. And by God's grace, she was able to deliver just fine, and had a great successful VBAC. So just because you've had multiple doesn't mean you can't. And another friend, she's actually pregnant with her 9th, believe it or not, and she's had 4 and 4. So she's had 4 C-sections and 4 VBACs. So again, just because you've had repeat C-sections does not mean that you're not a good candidate for a VBAC. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. It just lowers your odds again. So, and then they want you, like, it betters your odds to have 18 months between your last labor and delivery and your due date. If you're new around here, you probably don't know any of these things, but if you've been around for a little bit and seen some of my other videos, you probably know that my youngest son is 18 months currently. And when I got pregnant, it was, he was 10 months, I believe. I have to do the math. It was like 9 or 10 months. And that's what I thought. It was supposed to be 18 months from labor and delivery to pregnancy, but that's not the case. It's from labor and delivery to your due date, which there's more than enough time. I still have like 2.5 months to go. So I'm past that 18-month mark. I'm clear. But that, again, doesn't say that you're not a good candidate. It just can, lower your odds. With that being said, and then the other thing, the last part is the kind of incision that you had. So just because you might have a side-to-side incision on the outside doesn't mean that the incision on your uterus was also side-to-side. If it is an up and down incision on your uterus, then there's more likely to, you're at a higher chance to have uterine rupture, which is the main concern with VBAC, is uterine rupture. It actually only happens in about 1 in 200 women. It's very rare, but it can happen, and it's more likely to happen if you have an incision that goes up and down, because when the contractions are happening, it can tear that way. It's much easier that way, where side to side, your uterus is stronger, because you're contracting more this way, your incision this way it's stronger. So knowing what kind of incision you have, which you would have to talk to your doctor or the medical team that operated on you during your C-section to know that information, because again, like I said, just because you have a side-to-side incision on the outside does not mean that your incision on your uterus is side-to-side. So that also helps a lot, and it just gives you a good understanding of what the situation is. and the reason why uterine rupture is a scary situation is because the baby would lose oxygen very quickly, and you would lose blood. Like you could, so then it turns into a very urgent emergency C-section. It has to be done very quickly, and so you're in more danger that way. But again, my biggest tip, my number one tip with prepping for a VBAC is pick a doctor that is supportive of VBAC, that has experience with VBACs, that supports you in your choice for VBAC, and understands and is just supportive, just plain and simple supportive of your decision. And you want to ask these questions when you're talking to your doctor, when you're trying to find a doctor. So because my husband is military, he's getting out. That's why we relocated up to Idaho. But I have not been able to really choose my doctor. It was just who was assigned to me. And so this is the first time that I actually had to vet out a doctor, which was great because I needed a doctor to do a VBAC. Where I'm currently located in Idaho, they don't no doctors. It's not allowed in the city that I'm in to perform VBACs. And even the closest one to me over in Washington, they don't do VBACs either. So I actually am driving 45 minutes away to the town over, a few towns over, so that I can actually deliver at a hospital that does perform VBACs. And so I had to be very specific with my doctor, finding a doctor who would support me in my VBAC. So just, do your due diligence, find a doctor who's educated and knowledgeable and supportive of a VBAC, because not all doctors will be. And if there's any kind of pushback when you're asking these questions, that might be a little bit of a red flag. So with my doctor, who's very open and honest, he has performed at least 1,000 VBACs. I just remember that number and thinking that's insane. That's a lot of experience. That was super important. That is a huge point that I believe most people will say, as far as a VBAC is concerned, pick a good doctor that's going to be supportive and knowledgeable about it, because that makes a huge difference. And you and your doctor, you're a team, you're doing this together, and so it matters a lot. And my hope is that obviously I can do a VBAC successfully, but understanding also what their cesarean rates are, and how well they go. So that is my first tip. And then my second one is understanding your C-section. I gave you my story of my C-section and why I ended up in a C-section. So knowing if it's something, and again, not to say that just because it has been your past history doesn't mean it won't change, but sometimes they say your pelvis size, or if you had a failure to progress, things like that, or it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a repeat C-section. It just means that if you've only had one C-section and these are the issues, it might be a repeat issue. You might be somebody who struggles to progress, and understanding why that is really matters, because there may be something you can do about it, and also understanding, I'll get into that part later, but just understanding your C-section or C-sections, why they happened. Was it something that, again, in my situation, was random, it just kind of happened, or is it something that is hereditary, or it repeats itself? If you've only had one C-section, it's hard to know that, but if you've had multiple C-sections, it's really important to understand your C-section, why it happened, and if it's a regularity issue. So I hope that is helpful in understanding that. So for me, I've only had one C-section, and it was something that was random. It wasn't a regular, normal issue for me. And so that betters my chances for a VBAC. Okay, so that's number 2, understanding your C-section. And number 3 is your birth plan. So not to say if these things happen that it's going to lessen your odds or anything like that, but just understanding, having like interventions better your chances having a repeat C-section. That's not to say that you can't get the epidural or they can't give you Pitocin or any of those other options to help you progress and like get you there, but it's, I don't want to, but it betters your odds if you don't have any interventions. If you just go into spontaneous birth versus getting induced, if you don't get the epidural, if you don't get Pitocin or any of those other medications that make you progress, and again, not to say it can't happen, and my doctor has even made that very clear, like if we need to use Pitocin or something like that, it's totally doable, but it just like, if you had like a point system, right, it just gives you more points towards having a C-section, not necessarily pushes you over the edge and like makes you have a C-section, if that is clear, and I hope it is. So understand, just because you may have interventions or you may have medications, it doesn't mean that you're going to have a C-section. It just means that it heightens your odds. So your birth plan matters. And that was one of the things that I made very clear to my doctor. Like, I don't want any interventions. If I am 42 weeks pregnant and I'm like healthy and we're good, like leave me be. This baby will come. I tend to have late babies at least like a week late. So that's normal for me and it's not of a concern. So that's one of those things, is that I don't want to be induced. I don't want to have Pitocin or any of these other medications that would progress me along if I don't need it. And in the past, I haven't needed it. The only time I ever needed like Pitocin or anything like that was either inductions, or if I had the epidural and it like kind of stalled or slowed down labor. As long as I'm not doing those things, then I should be fine, if that makes sense. So that was my plan, is like I want to do this naturally if I can, like drug-free. And I don't want any interventions. And he was super chill and super like, okay, like I totally understand it. I actually felt like heard and respected with him, which is the first, I think it's like the very first time, even having as much experience as I had, where I really felt like the doctor heard me and understood the importance of it and supported me in that. So that was great. So your birth plan matters. And preparing yourself for those things. And I'm going to do a video on like how I prepare. I've had 2 drug-free natural labors and deliveries. And then I've had 1 induction, 1.5 inductions, and I can explain that in that video. And then the other 2 were just spontaneous births with epidural. So I've had a few different experiences. And I feel like having a birth story, just like talking about that to explain my history a little bit, would be helpful. And then how I prepare for those things, because a lot of it is mind over matter. I have found, I had a friend, she was very helpful in this, in explaining that. And I didn't really believe her because of the labor and deliveries that I had, and then I tried it with my 5th and literally was the best labor I've had. So it definitely plays a part. But one of the things that I think really worked against me with number 6, with my son, is that I was so freaked out and traumatized by my delivery with number 5 that I panicked. The fear won over, and that is my next point. Number 4 is get rid of the fear. There are things like hypnobirthing, Christian hypnobirthing, meditations. There's so much help and resource with that to help you prepare, get in the right mind space to work through those things. And I think that it's really important. If you have any kind of trauma or fear because of your past deliveries, your past C-sections, whatever it might be, then you have to really work through that so that it's not affecting, like I should say infecting your next labor and delivery, so that you can really focus and enjoy the delivery that you're going to be having and look forward to it, instead of dreading it and being scared, expecting the shoe to drop, so to speak. And so in my research, that has been one of the things that have been the biggest points that moms have made in VBACs is don't be scared of your past experiences. Be able to really be hopeful and positive and focused on having that VBAC. And with that being said, the last point that I will make as far as preparing for a VBAC is be whether it's people in your life that have had successful VBACs, or watching YouTube videos of successful VBACs, or following people on Instagram who've had successful VBACs, joining groups on Facebook about VBACs. That is so helpful. Hearing stories of women who have experienced a successful VBAC, or multiple VBACs for that matter, and hearing their positive stories, hearing how they were successful, hearing how, great their experience was, and just knowing that they got through it will really help motivate you and put you in the right mind space, knowing, okay, just because I had a bad experience or a couple bad experiences doesn't mean that this one has to be, and I can be successful. Women are very successful in VBACs. It happens all the time. And hearing those stories and being motivated and encouraged by them are so very helpful. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoy the most. Anytime I am pregnant, I really enjoy watching labor and delivery, videos, vlogs. I love talking about it. I love hearing other people's stories. If I could just be a fly on the wall with it, I just love it. I really, really enjoy listening to labor and delivery stories because it's such a unique experience for each woman. I think that it's a beautiful moment. It's crazy. I don't know what else to say. I just love it. But specifically right now, what's been really encouraging to me is hearing stories, like I said, about my friend who's had 4 and 4, right? 4 vaginal, 4 C-sections, and being successful that many times after is such a huge encouragement. My friend who from back in San Diego, who just had her 3rd, and it was a successful VBAC. That's so encouraging and brings such hope to me, especially because I know that for me, I have really good odds to be able to have a VBAC, but that doesn't mean that I'm not in the back of my head thinking this could very well turn out to be another C-section. And it kind of still freaks me out. Sorry. I didn't have a terrible C-section experience, besides the surgery and recovery itself. I did have a good team. It went well. It was, successful. I didn't have any issues or complications. The nursing team after, it was during COVID and stuff like that. So there was those kind of things, but for the most part, I had a good experience. But after having 5 natural births, it was a really hard experience, and I felt very alone. It was very mentally straining, and I couldn't really participate with my family. It was a very lonely experience, and I just don't want to do that. And obviously, this will be my 7th. I'm getting older. It's not as easy to recover from C-sections in that situation, and so I really don't want to have another one. But obviously, it's in God's hands, and I'm not in control of that. I can just do my very best by preparing myself in the best ways that I can. And then however it goes. But that doesn't mean that I'm not a little bit worried about that, or, have some have some anxiety about it. So those are my tips and pointers, some information on a VBAC. I hope that this is really helpful for you guys, and encouraging, just hearing some of the stories, and gosh, guys, I'm praying for you. My heart goes out to every mama who's ever had a C-section. That is, it's not an easy experience, and my heart has been forever changed by it, and I'm just so like soft towards C-section mamas now, having that thorough understanding of what it's like. And I am praying for you. I'm praying for you all to have a very successful, enjoyable, amazing experience. If you're watching this and you've had a VBAC before, please leave a comment down and share that positive experience for the rest of us who are watching this, because I think that could be so encouraging and helpful. I know that I would love to read and hear the stories. Again, like I said, I love labor and delivery stories, but right now I appreciate so much mamas who have shared their VBAC stories, and I'm sure other moms would as well. So if you could please just flood the comments with all of the positive VBAC experiences, or any other tips or tricks or anything that has been helpful that I didn't mention, please let me know. Please let me know in the comments. It would be so helpful. If you're not really comfortable leaving a comment, that's not your style, and you're on Instagram, please go over and go to Instagram, find me, Captivated and Cultivating, message me privately, and I can go ahead and I will put in the comments the story, anonymously, if that's not, your thing. But I seriously would love to just encourage mamas. I'm with you. I'm praying for you, and I cannot wait to hear some amazing stories and share mine. I'm very hopeful, again, like I said, but the reality is it might not happen, and I'm not trying to focus on that part. I'm just trying to focus on the goal, but also not fool myself, you know what I mean? So again, I hope this video was helpful. Please hit the like button if it was helpful or resonated with you, so that other mamas can see this as well. Share it with anybody who you may know is going to be having a VBAC or trying for a VBAC, and subscribe if you are not subscribed yet, because I would love to have you around here. I love, encouraging, supportive, loving mamas. So come be a part of our community, subscribe, and as always, friends, happy homemaking, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.